So part of your question was, are there specific investments that they really need to look at now? It's the energy efficient ones. Let's say I'm going to put in energy efficient lighting or energy efficient HVAC or an energy efficient roof or building envelope or exterior walls. All of those things have specific accelerated depreciation based on the square footage of the building. So if I put all those components in and I use standard of wages, basically union wages, in order to put those systems in, I can be eligible for up to $6 per square foot of accelerated depreciation. But all the construction has to begin by June 30th of next year because they rolled back all these energy credits, and this got rolled up into one of them. And then, the final piece is this whole new factory write-off, the 100% write-off of new facilities.
As you started to allude to there, Mike, the OBB does introduce full first-year expensing for qualified production property facilities. So for an OEM considering expanding or modernizing their U.S. manufacturing footprint, what are the critical factors that they need to consider to ensure that their products qualify for this accelerated depreciation, and what pitfalls might they want to be aware of?
It's 100% write-off of your manufacturing plant that's associated with the manufacturing or production activity. And so it's not the entire plant, right? There's parts of your plant like offices or sales areas or engineering space, your parking lot. There are things that do not qualify as manufacturing. We're going to have to wait for guidance on some of this stuff, like warehouse. Is that directly attributable to your manufacturing or is it not? Are they going to allow support related activities or support related areas as part of this or not? My guess is not, because it's specifically stated administrative and office and other spaces that have to be excluded.
For an OEM with a global supply chain and a diverse workforce, which of these less highlighted provisions warrant their immediate attention, and why would that be?
Well, we've already covered one, and that was the energy efficient building enhancements, right? That kind of flew under the radar that they were getting rid of that. So if you're considering energy efficient lighting or something along those lines, then it makes sense to start that sooner than later because that benefit expires. You mentioned overtime reporting, no tax on overtime. That's a little misleading. It's no tax on overtime up to $25,000, $12,500 if I'm a single individual or head of household, but $25,000 if I'm a married individual. Mm-hmm. Well, the IRS has come out and said, hey, look, we're not going to change the W-2 this year. So business owners, you need to be able to calculate and provide that information to your employees, because they're going to be asking you for that information because it's not going to be on the Form W-2. The payroll companies aren't going to be required to put that on there because they're not going to change the form this year. They're going to wait to next year to change the form for this provision. Same thing on no tax on tips. Not that has a oversized impact on your listeners, right, and readers, but the no tax on overtime does, and it's retroactive to January 1. So I have to go back and calculate, well, what were those overtime amounts that were paid to my employees?
Then given the combination of opportunities and complexities introduced by the OBBB, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 actionable steps that every U.S. OEM, regardless of size, should take now to maximize the benefits of the legislation and position themselves for not just current but long-term growth?
I think we'll start back to the first question you asked, and that's R&D, right? I mean, right. If you're doing design and development related activities, I'm developing or improving a product or a process, and I'm eliminating design uncertainty through modeling, simulation, or trial and error. You're building prototypes, you're testing them, making changes, those sort of things. It probably has some significant R&D expenses, and the R&D tax credit is really rewarding, and you don't have this punitive requirement to capitalize your research expenditures anymore. And so I got the sense and the feeling from our clients over the last few years that they've been a little cautious for including superfluous or other type of expenditures in there that if they could argue that it wasn't research, they would argue that it wasn't research because they didn't want to capitalize the research expenditure. I think that'll change now. I think the pendulum will swift back towards a, hey, look, let's invest in R&D, and it aligns with the kind of the purpose of the bill and investing in U.S. manufacturing, and that that's the other provision that I think is so important. And that's the capital projects, the combination of bonus depreciation, the qualified production property, Section 179 energy efficient buildings deductions, and Section 179 in general, just to be able to write off all these assets. And it really encourages investments in the United States because, you got to do something to offset some of these tariff costs, right? And so this is kind of a balance, I think, between the two to try and just keep U.S. manufacturing more competitive, regardless of where they're getting the raw materials.
Just, I mean, adding on to, what Mike said about the U.S. manufacturing, right? I mean, on the R&D, we talked about, you don't have to capitalize anymore. However, if you're doing foreign R&D, you still do need to be capitalizing that foreign R&D and amortizing that over a 15-year period, right? So the incentive of this bill really was, trying to figure out how to bring back U.S. manufacturing in some of that. And yeah, it's, I think for the capital projects, they've moved that out to, you got to start it by, I think it's 2029 or 2030, so it's giving you some time to do it because you just can't start a project tomorrow and have it done, right? And you just have to have it kicked off to be able to do that. So